Thanks for joining us on Khari Free at Last on Bounce 23 TV. I'm Khari and Harl. As the nation remembers the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, where would we be without the civil rights movement in Columbus and the state of Ohio? Joining me is Reverend John Coates and educators Richard Lundy and Kumari Odai. Gentlemen, how are you?
We're just fine, thank you.
Richard Lundy, I'm going to start with you. Where would we be without civil rights in the state of Ohio? What was it like in the olden days? What was it like in the 20s and 30s? I'm sorry, I'm messing with you. Well, what was it like? Where would we be if we didn't have civil rights? Doc.
I'm kind of puzzled when you ask that question because I go back to that time. I'm a product of that generation. Mm-hmm. And I remember here early in Columbus when they had a mini city hall out on Mount Vernon Avenue, and I was the administrator there. At that particular point in time, what was going on with regard to civil rights movement, we had an active NAACP.
Now, I'm told when black people went into the theaters, they had to sit in the balcony in this town. I'm told that there are certain clubs that they could not go into, certain restaurants they could not eat in during this period of time. Is that what you're researching? Now, you lived through this. Is that true?
Well, yes, that's true, but it was a little bit, I'm not that old.
No, I'm talking about, but you are a historian.
Right. It was true, they had several theaters here in Columbus that you had to go in the back, you had to go upstairs. There were certain areas that you couldn't go to, like the east side was sort of boxed in, and the boundaries were sort of, they were there that you knew that you couldn't go that far. You know, we didn't go across Broad Street at that particular point.
So you were restricted where you could live also?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was the nature of how it was at that particular point in time for us. We didn't go downtown to all the stores. We went to some stores. Mm-hmm. There were some restaurants we could go to and some we couldn't. So it was still there, much there. We saw it. I got to see it and had the opportunity to experience that.
Kumari, is that do you see that as being progressive, or did we go backwards by being able to go to other folks' restaurants in the city of Columbus, state of Ohio?
Well, let me begin by saying I was 3 years old when the March on Washington took place in 1963. And having said that, I was being a kid during that time frame. So I really wasn't privy to what was going on.
But I'm sure you're a historian, you're an educator.
As I've gotten older and being a product of Columbus.
Is it progressive? Has it been something has it been something that we should be stand up and be proud of, or what?
In a sense, we should be in a celebratory mindset, but...
You said in a sense, and that means in a sense we should not be?
In a sense, yeah, because we haven't come that far.
What do you mean we haven't come that far?
As we could have come.
Wait a minute, Reverend Coates, they keep talking, the civil rights leaders talk about the gains. Oh, that word makes me sick sometimes. Oh, the gains that we made, but yet the Urban League just came out in 2012 and said all the gains were wiped out.
Well, you know, they say that hindsight is 20/20 vision, and when I talk to my parents, my grandparents, older members at my church, when they talk about the old times and the segregated times within our city, they said, well, we had things of our own. We had businesses of our own, bus companies of our own, restaurants of our own, places to shop within our community.
But integration was better. Integration was better. It was a better way of living. Am I correct?
No, not necessarily, because what happened is that black commerce and business was severely affected by integration.
Wait a minute, Richard Lundy. Wasn't integration supposed to be the panacea? Oh, I use big words. Supposed to be the great thing that was supposed to happen, huh?
My own personal opinion, I think we got duped because originally I don't think that the movement was about integration. I think it was about equal rights. And I think they did a sleight of hand trip with us and got us to buy into integration.
They switched up on us? What do you mean? What do you mean it was about equal rights? What do you mean?
We were talking about we wanted to be able to live where we wanted to live, have jobs where we had jobs at, have our own political parties, our representatives. We wanted to have our own businesses.
So we wanted to be full citizens, John Coates?
Yes. Well, most certainly, because any group of people deserve to at least have parity in the land, so it's having the right to do so. But what happened is that when integration took place, we stopped patronizing our businesses and we went downtown to shop other places.
Well, wait a minute. We were denied equal human equality. I mean, that's what this was supposed to have been about. There was white only, colored only water fountains and restaurants, apartment. Come on, wasn't that movement worth it?
Well, I think public accommodations, having the right of being treated like a man and a full-grown woman is important. But when we looked at the commerce of it, 50 years later, we're severely impacted.
Integration. What is it good for? Up next on Khari, Free at Last. Welcome back to Khari, Free at Last. Black people in Columbus own no hotels, daily newspapers, manufacturing plants of any kind, hospitals, banks, department stores, grocery stores, airlines, insurance companies, and that's just the beginning. What did we get with integration? Joining me is TalkTainmentRadio.com host Irv Jallo, the Reverend John Coates, and educator Richard Lundy. What did we get with integration?
I don't know, because I can't see it.
Wait a minute, what you mean you don't know?
I can't see it. Well, our schools are tore up, our children are not being educated properly. What did we get? We don't own anything. You just said it.
Wait a minute. We don't have any banks. We don't have, in fact, what do we have, Reverend?
Look, I'm hard-pressed to find as well. What we had is an opportunity to serve. Back in slave days, there was a woman that was called a mammy. And what a mammy would do is that the mammy, even though she was pregnant, her breast would be filled with milk. And the milk that was intended for her own child, she would nurse the slave master's child to health with her milk. So basically what we got from integration was we were able to become good mammies, if you will, to nurse other communities to health.
Well, wait a minute, Richard Lundy. Dr. King said that freedom would be holding hands with little white boys and white girls and holding hands as sisters and brothers. What's wrong with that?
It sounds good, Khari, but that's not the reality.
What do you mean?
That's not what we see. That's not what that wasn't going to happen in the first place. Right after that happened, if you go back and you remember after in '63 here in Columbus, that was when you had the white flight. And the white people moved to the suburbs. So they wasn't trying to hold hands and hold hands. They were still trying to take the advantage.
So what did we get out of integration, Reverend?
We moved to the suburbs and whites came back into the central city.
Wait a minute, people of your faith pushed this. They said it was the good thing. It was going to be good for us. What did we really get?
Actually, the people of faith didn't really say much about it. In fact, this 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. We remember the Dr. Martin Luther King speech, "Let Freedom Ring." Well, history rewards our research and tells us that Dr. King had even difficulty getting support from his own Baptist brethren. And that's why they had to form a denomination, the Progressive Baptist Convention, in order to support him.
Irv Jallo, what does freedom mean?
Freedom means...
It's freedom, well, first of all, it's freedom integration.
Freedom integration. Freedom is...
I said it's freedom integration. Is it integration?
No.
What is it?
I think that freedom should entail you being able to have you own something. What do we own? We don't own anything.
Well, that's not true.
You're paying gas. You could be paying a gas bill, electric bill, water bill every single month. But all of our money goes back out of our community and is not withheld for our own. What do we have? We can't support our own grocery stores, our own hospitals, our own schools. What do we have?
Welfare, food stamps, Obama phones. That's not freedom either.
That's not freedom.
Well, so what are we celebrating? What are we going down there to celebrate? I love Dr. King. I want to go on record that that's my dude. But at the same time, what are we celebrating if you're telling me that we don't have nothing for this, Richard Lundy?
Well, I think that for me, I wouldn't say that I would be celebrating that. I would acknowledge that that happened and it occurred. And I think the one thing that I think that came out of that was it brought to the attention to the masses of white people the nature of the veracity of the problem, how big the problem was.
Okay, so why don't we have any black banks? Why don't we have any black insurance? Wait a minute, hold up here for a minute. Why don't we have any black hotel, motel, holiday? I'm sorry, I was getting off there.
You're a rapper, right?
Yeah, I'm a rapper, yeah. Oh, we got rapping, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But how come we don't have any of this stuff, Richard Lundy?
Well, because we're still working for somebody else.
Whoa, what's that mean? Who?
Well, if I work for the government, I work there 8 hours a day. I'm there, and I always say, pressing license plates. Whatever it is that I'm doing that 8 hours a day. I don't have time to develop my avocation.
So what you're saying is that we are slaves in another sense? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Wait a minute,
Absolutely.
I ain't no slave.
Once Black Wall
No,
Street
you're just a
was bombed,
Brooks Brothers
Wait a
suit
minute,
wearing slave. Wait
Wait a minute. Eyes free.
no,
a Brooks Brothers suit wearing. Look, freedom is opportunity. Freedom is opportunity. And when we talk about marches being held, the purpose of a march isn't to celebrate. The purpose of the march is to give instructions and to give a clearing call for something. After the 1963 historic Civil Rights March, what came after that?
Right.
The Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act.
But Richard Lundy said we were slaves, that we are slaves today.
you work
Do you
for
agree
somebody,
with that?
When you work for somebody else all day and you don't have the opportunity to develop your creativity and to put whatever your dreams were into play, then yes, you are still a slave.
Wait a minute. What's stopping you? What's stopping black people from owning
You
banks?
got to go to
What's
work.
stopping black people from owning insurance
Where
companies?
you gonna-
What's stopping black people? We don't even have one grocery store
There's nothing stopping
in Columbus
there's
that's
nothing,
owned by black
there's
people. What's
nothing-
stopping
There's
us?
nothing stopping us except for our own mentality, okay? Because we have the resources, but what happens is that we're like that elephant that's put in captivity in that little state
you're
that's
not
put
in
in the
slavery.
ground. So we're
You're not in slavery.
You're
You just have a
enslaved.
confused
We're
mind.
enslaved
Mental slavery.
mentally. It's
Mental slavery.
It's a mental slavery, which is the greatest kind of slavery. There's genocide where you kill people, and then there's menticide where you put people to sleep, and we have
Richard
become
Lundy,
a nation
you
of
started
zombies.
this. You started this. What kind of slavery are we
They
in?
took the chains off of our ankles and whatever and put them on our brains and our mind.
Oh, document that.
Yeah.
Document that, Reverend. Come on now.
Document that?
Yes.
The boys sagging their pants.
Is that slavery?
That's mental illness.
That's freedom.
That's
That's
mental
freedom to
ill-
sag.
that's mental
What are you
illness.
talking about?
That's mental illness.
How?
Because they don't know any better.
What do you mean don't know any better?
They feel that that is something that they're out there. It's a style. It's something like that or whatever. Who manufactured the first pair of sagging pants? Did somebody black?
What message does sagging pants send? What message does it send?
It sends a lot of
Richard?
messages.
Like what?
One of the messages it sends that I don't have self-respect. I don't respect myself.
And then
Or
I'm
anyone else.
Oh,
or
and I'm
anyone
still
else.
a slave. I'm still a slave because on the plantation you were not given a belt to hold your pants up properly. So therefore, if you're getting chased by a pit bull or the police or whatever, you can't run. Where you going?
You mean to tell me that we still have a slave mentality? Is that
Absolutely.
what
yes.
you're saying,
Oh, yes.
Reverend?
Oh, yes.
How? How do we have a... You don't look like a slave. You don't look like a slave. You don't look... Nah, I might. But the rest of y'all don't look like a slave. What are you talking
I
about?
really believe that after the bombing of Black Wall Street, where we owned so many businesses and we never recuperated from that, we own more businesses in 1921 than we do right now in 2013. I think that put the fear in us and kind of killed something within us that said that, you know, no matter what we do, we are always going to be setbacks.
So are you telling me, Richard Lundy, that right now we're functioning servants? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, I am.
And that's why these movies that talk about all this other stuff as servants, you're saying that's what, is that what we're designed to become and stay, Reverend Coates?
Well,
Servants?
unfortunately, not only to add insult to injury, we have also been lulled to sleep. We have been rocked to sleep now. We're sound asleep now because we thought that the election
2008.
of a black man to the United States presidency was it. Well, guess what? As I said before, we are the walking dead. We're a nation of zombies.
Well, you hadn't said that before, but that's interesting. Maybe separate was equal. Up next on Khari, Free at Last. Welcome back to Khari, Free at Last. Black people got political positions, government jobs, rent subsidies, food stamps, high unemployment, ghettos, illegal drugs, and mass incarceration under integration. Did we get tricked? Was separation better? Joining me is TalkTamerRadio.com host Earth Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, and educator Richard Lundy. Did we get tricked, Earth Jallow?
Yeah, we got tricked.
Tricked how?
Because I didn't get any land, and I don't have a mule either.
What, you mean you didn't get your 40 acres?
Nope, I didn't get 40 acres.
But you got to be the mayor of the city. You got to be the superintendent of schools. My God, man, you got to be city council. You got to determine the city council budget. What's wrong with that, Reverend Coates?
Well, the problem is that we have basically taken the master civic responsibilities over, but yet, but what we don't own anything. And
You got rent subsidies. You got food stamps.
we still
you got
don't.
unemployment
You said it. It's rent.
Wait a minute, home ownership under George W. Bush.
But they gave it too. They gave me home ownership under no credit requirements, and then they bet it. They gambled on the possibility of me losing the home that they knew I wasn't qualified to finance in the first place.
Called derivatives.
Derivatives.
Called derivatives. Richard Lundy, we're now mayors. We're now superintendent of schools. Isn't that progress? Isn't it?
If you just deal with numbers, if all you're dealing with is numbers, if you're talking about benefits, tangible kinds of things, no.
But we weren't mayors before. We never even had dreams. You remember back in '67 when Carl Stokes and Richard Hatcher crossed that platform, everybody was happy. We said it's a new day.
Well, let's deal with numbers. The average income for black families is about $32,000 a year compared to a white family's $52,000.
Well, the single black woman has an average net worth of $5, but you know, but under separated, what would we have gained if we had stayed separated?
A better health. Better health amongst our, well, because we would have taken better care of our people. Look at what we are subjected to. If we had stayed on the farm, okay, we would have eaten better.
Way better.
Way better than what we did when we came to the city.
Well, I have a theory, and my theory is that if we had stayed in the South as opposed to coming up the North, we would have probably been governors of 10 states, controlled 10 states, and been in a position to have
just
real
by
power.
sheer population.
Just by sheer population. You controlled the economics, controlled the politics, or the education systems. Did we get tricked to run up to the North where we got ghettos and jails?
I think the Great Migration did trick us. We provided labor force for the automotive industry, but the only thing we got out of it politically was mayors and some congressional representation.
Irv Jallow, we were told that was freedom. The Ku Klux Klan was Ku Klux Klan. I always say Ku, it's Ku. Ku Klux Klan was beating down our doors. We were told this was freedom.
Let me tell you where we are right now.
Were we lied to?
We were lied to. We're still the help. We are still the help. We are the help. We help to build their corporations to bigger dollars. We get trickle-down paychecks. We are still the help. When we go into the school, we're operating off of their curriculum. We're not operating off of African or African-American centered curriculum. Everything that we do, we are helping them. We're not helping ourselves.
But they gave us opportunity.
But you've been mayors of cities. They gave us. You messed up Detroit. You were mayor of the city. You messed up Detroit. Now come on, that's as black as you can get. What happened there?
The first example that I think of when you talk about cities is Gary, Indiana, where a black man was mayor of Gary, Indiana, and then they pulled the tax base out from under it and then say, well, guess what? A black man can't run nothing. So Detroit was more than just Kwame Kilpatrick. Detroit was a many things that existed within Detroit. So that's not necessarily so. We have to look at the whole picture.
But given an opportunity, isn't it better, Richard Lundy, to be mayor of a city where you're commanding billions of dollars of resources and you're able to deal with ghettos and poverty? Isn't this a wonderful thing?
If that fits your ego, yes. But if you're talking about helping people and serving people.
Under integration, we got power, did we not?
No, we didn't.
We've got a president. Doesn't that president have power?
He has no power. You can tell by the way.
Of course he has power.
Has Congress passed any meaningful legislation?
Yeah, he passed the stimulus bill. He saved the banks. He saved Wall Street.
He had passed the job bill.
And thank you, George Bush, for the stimulus bill.
What's that,
Do we need jobs bills? Don't we need jobs?
Yes.
He can't get them to move on that?
So you're saying he has no power?
Yes.
Irv Jallow, does he have power?
No, power
You wouldn't have got there under segregation,
Power
buddy.
is when you own
He wouldn't have got
things.
there under segregation?
We wouldn't have got a black president under segregation.
When you own
You agree
things,
or disagree?
You get power.
We probably wouldn't want one.
Irv Jallow, you were saying, I'm sorry.
Power. If you're talking about power, power is in the ownership of things. Power is when we're able to employ our own. That's power. When I don't have to pay my gas bill every month to somebody, a company doesn't look like me, doesn't put back into my community. And that's what we're doing. All of our dollars go out of our community to service others.
So under integration, Reverend Coates, what are black politicians and what's their value?
Well, obviously the value has become slim to none now because community is not gaining from their presence.
Right.
The community isn't gaining from the presence of the president, but part of that is our fault.
In what
Okay,
way?
because we're
Blame
not
the victim. Here we
no,
go.
it's not
Blame
blame the
the
victim. It's
victim.
it's taking on responsibility. We should hold our elected officials accountable. We refuse to do so. We have a president that we have refused to give an agenda to.
What do you mean? Yes, that's not true. The Congressional Black Caucus gave him an agenda, and he said a rising tide lifts all boats.
And so they gave agenda, and it got tossed into the trash can.
No, what happened is that when they tried to hold him accountable, black people got upset with him and claimed to vote him out of office, so they backed off.
There you go with a slave mentality.
Oh, is that what you call it?
That's what it is.
So a slave mentality, give me a definition of a slave mentality.
A slave mentality is where you don't think in your best interest and most definitely don't act in your best interest. A slave says, master, not that your house is on fire, but our house is on fire.
So after all this time of integration, what, if you can say it quickly, what do we got to show for it, Reverend?
A nice suit, a nice car, a nice house with finance notes on all of it. We're in debt. We have debt to show.
And stress.
Oh, my God. You know, I had
failing education system.
A dream. Let me repeat that. I had a dream. Up next on Khari, Free at Last. Welcome back to Khari, Free at Last. Civil rights leaders talk about the dream. What is the dream? As a matter of fact, which dream are they talking about? I'm confused. Joining me is TalkTamerRadio.com host Earth Jallow, Reverend John Coates, and Richard Lundy. One of the things that the dream did, before Dr. King really began to move, we were living under hardcore racism, a form of apartheid equal to what was happening in South Africa, what was happening in India, and all this kind of stuff. What is the dream, Reverend? Did we achieve the dream at all?
Well, apparently the dream became that we didn't have to fear white sheets now, but the white sheet served a purpose because we were able to identify the racists because of the Billy Club and because of the white sheet. Now we are dealing with veiled racism, where it's not as easily identifiable.
Code words and all that kind of stuff.
But yet the impact is still the same.
Richard Lundy, what is the dream? Dr. King, it was confusing because long before the end of the speech, he had a whole lot of stuff to say in the earlier part, which never gets talked about. But what is the dream?
Well, I think that for me, when I watched that on TV and heard him talk about that, I wasn't sitting there dreaming. I was there because I thought that the movement was about bringing to attention the concerns of our people. And I think that they muddied up the waters by saying that it's a dream. And I think that that was done by design. They did that on purpose to say dream, and over the years, it just takes on a whole nother thing. So if you go and you look at the Martin Luther King celebration here in Columbus, what is that? That's like a fashion show.
In fact, they're taking a whole man's life.
So that he was more than a dream. He's just like you said in the speech. He talked about more. He talked about economic stuff. He talked about jobs. He talked about those kinds of things. And so here we come up and they just put it in a little capsule and say, "Well, he had a dream."
Here's the dream.
And so then we get stuck on dream.
Reverend Coates.
You take a whole man's life and sum it down to one phrase, and really a phrase that has no substance to it at all.
But this wasn't about Dr. King. This was about the condition of black people at that time, living under apartheid in North America, living under hardcore racism in North America. Didn't the change of the laws help, Earth Jallow?
The dream has turned into a nightmare.
What do you mean?
The dream has turned into a nightmare because we have not achieved any of the things that Dr. King was working so hard for.
Did Dr. King change his mind about
yes,
immigration?
he said at the end that I'm afraid that I'm leading my people into a burning house.
What does that mean from your interpretation?
That I think I made a mistake and not only separate but equal, but maybe we should have kept segregation, on this table and did our own thing.
Could we have been separate and equal, Reverend Coates?
Well, if society, we could have been if society was fair. See, the whole purpose of school desegregation or school integration and trying to desegregate schools had to deal with giving that our children would get the same supplies and resources that white children would get.
Correct.
But we were happy in our schools with our teachers who loved us, who went to church with us, who lived next door.
Yes, but you could not have gone to school in Gehenna. You could not go to school in Reynoldsburg.
But we didn't want to go to school in Gehenna. It was about getting a new textbook.
It was about
having a decent desk to sit in. It was about having a building that wasn't leaking.
Right.
So somebody conned us and flipped the meaning of this?
Yes.
That's not what we really wanted?
No.
We didn't. What did we want? Richard Lundy, quickly. What did we want?
We wanted our schools to be funded just like their schools to be funded. We wanted the quality teachers, the same kind of teachers that their schools had. That's what we wanted.
So
All
we wanted equality,
Yes.
not integration.
Parity, yes.
So if we had separation but equality, everything would be all right. Is that what you're telling me?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, is that what you're saying, Irv?
I think that we would have been a lot further along.
Final word, Richard
I
Lundy.
think we'd be much better off economically
What do you mean much better off?
because we would have been doing business with each other. That was what
We
we
would have had
did
our
back in those
businesses.
days,
That's
and
right.
we don't do that anymore.
And dependency would have been out the door. We wouldn't be
Right,
dependent. And
right.
so you're saying quickly we're totally dependent, Reverend Coates?
We are totally dependent right now, but we still have time
That's
to
right.
change. Patronize a black business today.
Thanks to TalkTameRadio.com host Irv Jallow, the Reverend John Coates, Richard Lundy, and Kamari O'Day. And thank you for watching Khari Free at Last on Bounce 23 TV.